He was diagnosed in December of last year. Chris Snow has since become an absolutely inspirational figure. It is ALS Awareness Month in June, and a Trickshot for Snowy has taken off. Quite frankly, the hashtag of the summer, in a summer where we needed a little bit of good news. It provided us some smiles. Chris Snow, Assistant GM of the Calgary Flames, has been kind enough to join us live right here on Tim and Sid, on television, radio, online, and on podcast. Chris, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on today.
Hey, thank you. It's tremendous to be here, and I'm standing in a spot where my son sank his trick shot from my bedroom window because, as all of us who are quarantined know, we've got to find one place to hide, and that's my spot.
Chris, before we dive into how much good this is doing, how much this is doing for awareness and fundraising, I think we also have to give time to talk about who, in your opinion, had the worst trick shot. Let's let that breathe. Not all the trick shots were good, Chris. Which one did you look at and say, you know what, could have been better?
Well, the one that wasn't put on Twitter, and I had a buddy, and he wanted to do that run up to a golf ball and take that swing while you're moving, and he had 3 takes, and he missed by about a foot on each one. And the comments that his buddies were making, straight faced, not trying to be funny, like, you've got this. Oh no. And they did that 3 or 4 times, and the 3 of us on the string were dying. The guy said, I got to take this again. We're like, no, you've got to go with that. And we're still waiting. I'm not sure we'll all see it.
I'm full disclosure, Chris, I may or may not have a video of one of the exact same thing that you're talking about. I'll post, you know what? I'll post it after the show just to show mine. I went straight into the water.
Honestly, I think if we could do an outtakes period after all the trick shots are done, the entertainment value would be through the roof.
You'd have a Netflix docu-series worth of material.
Yeah.
This would make Lion King look like a 1-episode show. Like, I'm sure it's out there. Chris Snow, Assistant GM of the Flames, joining us. Chris, I know you've been asked this a lot, so forgive me, but your reaction, not just to Trickshot for Snowy, but just from the hockey community and the sporting community after it's kind of spread and people have heard your story. Yeah. Your reaction to how people have reacted to the news that you and your family were given. What goes through your head?
You always know that people are going to react, I think, with some sympathy, and they're going to show you the best side of them. But what I think we've realized, and what's been reaffirmed to us, is that the sporting community really rallies around itself, and it's very small. I started out as a baseball writer back in 2000 and a hockey writer back in 2003, and then a baseball writer after that, and have been in the hockey business now for about 14 years. And the way that all those people have come back to me and supported me and my family, and people in the city of Calgary who were not from here. I grew up in Boston. She grew up in the Midwest of the U.S. And we could not possibly feel more at home in this league and in this city than we do right now. And my wife has said she will live in this country and in this city for the rest of her life. And I joked with Tree, our GM. I said, that's a bad negotiating tactic right there. But she means it because she feels so loved and supported in this community. And to know that and to watch, her go through this with me and our kids go through this and know how good they feel about the people around them, both near and far, has been, it's been very comforting at the beginning and end of every single day.
Chris Snow joining us here, hashtag Snowy Strong. And obviously, and I don't want to belittle the work ethic and the inner drive that you have, because I think that this is a lot of people will go in and out and notice how well you're doing and sometimes forget about how much work you're putting into this. But do you think that you've received strength from people cheering for you in this journey?
Without question. I think the word I've used recently is it feels a lot more worthwhile to go through this, knowing that I'm fundraising, knowing that we got to get a letter like we did yesterday from a woman or a man, I forget which, but someone in Edmonton who had lost his or her father. I don't know whether it was a him or her because Kelsey read it to me, but had lost his or her parents a week ago to ALS. And they had been reading the blog that she's written and following our story. And it gave them strength as they were going through this with their family. And we've gotten so many letters to that effect, that this has given people who are diagnosed hope that there's a clinical trial that may be coming that might help them. And to think that this is bigger than myself, both in the way of giving people better feeling on a given day, some hope, some comfort, and the knowledge that we might fundraise and help fund an additional trial or 2 or 10 that could lead to something like what I am in for somebody else and help lead to a cure. It makes this, again, it makes it feel worthwhile. And as I often say to my wife, I really want to beat this. And if I can't beat it, I want to live a very long time with it. And as long as I can do one of those 2 things, I would much rather do this than not, because that can sound crazy. But you don't get a lot of opportunities in your life to do something a lot bigger than you and something that's actually for the good, the big time good. And I think this is that thing for me.
Chris Snow, Assistant GM of the Calgary Flames, and one of the inspirational figures in sports, period, right now, joining us here on Tim and Sid. We're lucky to have him today. Chris, how, again, you were diagnosed with ALS in December of last year. 3 months later, there's
actually in June of last year.
Oh, June. Forgive me, please.
Yeah.
Correct me any chance again. I'm an idiot that way. Yes, please correct me. So June of last year. A little over a year later, there's also there's a pandemic.
Right.
What did the diagnosis do to you mentally when this rolled around?
Mentally, it didn't do a great deal. I was fortunate to know that I could work from home, and I was fortunate enough to know, going back to my diagnosis, that Ken King at that time and John Bean and Brad Treleving were plenty good with me doing the work I had to do from anywhere. So while I don't think I've worked less, I certainly have worked more creatively at times in order to make sure that my family, was with me more often. But I think when the pandemic started, the only concern was whether I could get to Toronto, where I went until my last visit there in late March. And then I began going in Calgary for my treatment, whether I could go there. So there was some anxiety with getting on the plane, going to the hotel. I guess the anxiety was lessened by there being 12 people staying in the 567 hotel, Delta Hotel downtown. I walked to check in and the key wasn't working, and I went to show an ID, and they said, "Oh no, sir, we know who you are." And it wasn't out of fame; it was out of a lack of the other 11 having.
They knew everyone by name. They knew everyone by name by that.
They did. So and then the people here in Calgary started to really advocate to the drug maker to get me to go here, and they made that happen in less than a month. And by May 1st, I was going in Calgary. So I've been just very careful. I don't go out of the house very much. I've been fortunate that I can work from home. And I think that, the pandemic has given me, on the positive side, just a lot more family time than I would have otherwise had.
Yeah, that's true for a lot of us. So it's supposed to be a year to live. And then, you celebrate by kicking a 43-yard field goal, which I'm still shaking my head. Please just tell me that you were a high school kicker.
I didn't kick at all. I played some soccer. I played some golf. I spent way more time on the school newspaper than I did on either of those things. Right. And but when I was in college, I lived across the road from the practice field at Syracuse University where the football team played. Okay. And a buddy of mine who was a really good high school kicker would meet me. We jumped that fence because they kept the lights on at night. And we would play horse like you would with a basketball, but we would kick field goals. So we'd say, okay, left hash 37 yards, right hash 41, and just move that ball around until somebody lost, which was usually me. But as I've been telling people, it's got a lot less to do with strength and technique. And I hadn't done that in probably 15 years. And when I grabbed the ball and inflated it and did that, and just needed a few takes, I was thrilled, because those reminders, or those things, are real reminders to me that I am every bit as strong as I am today as I was a year ago, with the exception of my right hand and arm, which were no good when I started this trial.
Tim, just one more time, the quote, "I hadn't done that in 15 years." Chris Snow. I'm going to write that down.
Well, it's just kicking a ball.
It's just kicking a ball.
It's a bit more detailed than that, Mr. Snow. Right.
Are you surprised at how far the trick shot for Snowy has traveled?
Yes and no. I think we're seeing the power of social media. I never had much of a following on Twitter, but to post that video and see that nearly 400,000 people have watched it tells me that we have the real capacity to reach some people. And I personally am hopeful that this is just the beginning of this trick shot. I've reached out personally to a number of NHL teams, be it the GM if I know him, the assistant GM, if there's a coach who I worked with along the way before. The idea being that I'd like to see this go through all 30 other teams. I'd like to see this cut across as much of the other professional sports as we can and into other industries. And I think that hopefully that snowball is still small right now. But to your point, we are let's see, about 20 days in or less, I guess about 19 days in, and we're at $41,000 raised, which gets our total that we've raised since my diagnosis to about $182,000, all toward research. And we've got about 300 outstanding challenges that we're waiting to see people respond to.
Better than anything.
I think we can help with that.
Yeah,
I think we can help with that, though.
Yes,
we can push.
Challenge some folks.
Now, do you need them?
Up your sleeves.
I don't have any that are good. See, that's my issue, Chris. See, the problem is the bar.
I don't think there's a threshold there.
Oh, well, I'm seeing a threshold, because what I'm seeing are people on jet skis catching balls. What I'm seeing are people kicking field goals 45 yards or longer. This is an amazing cause, but I am very self-conscious, and I want to be able, if I'm going to contribute, Chris, I want to be able to not embarrass myself, which is very difficult for me to do.
Sid, you can just pressure other people into doing it. That's one way to do it.
He knows me too well, Chris. I can do that very well. It
doesn't have to be athletic. It just requires creativity. I know you both have that.
You know what? All right, you got my juices flowing here. I got a couple ideas. I'll do that for you. Chris Snow is the assistant GM of the Calgary Flames. He is an absolute delight, and we are delighted to have him here on Tim and Sid. Chris, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to assume a lot of people privately and publicly have reached out in any number of ways. Who's the person that reached out that kind of surprised you, that took you aback, that you weren't expecting?
It might be this, I'd almost call it a relationship, that I seem to be starting to develop with Steve Gleason. And Steve Gleason was a New Orleans Saint, a famous one, blocked a famous punt after Hurricane Katrina when it first came back. And he was diagnosed 9 years ago with the disease. And Steve's foundation has raised in excess of $10 million. And he doesn't have any physical capabilities whatsoever. Lives his life on a ventilator, in a wheelchair, has a really neat technology that allows him to look at letters, and his voice was recorded, and the technology will speak the words that he types with his eyes in his voice. And he and Theo Epstein, the Cubs president of baseball ops, are very good friends, due to Steve being a Cubs fan and Theo being someone who just tends to find his way to people in other walks of life who he thinks would be great relationships to develop. And so Theo connected me to Steve, who the other day texted me, and I felt bad. I asked how long the text had taken to write. And he said about 15 minutes a word, but then he said text anytime and use this other app, and I am much, much quicker on that. So the world starts to be very small and very supportive at moments like that. And that just that gives me more energy and more motivation.
Yeah, his story is unbelievable, and his fight has been I almost swore has been inspiring. Yeah. It has been very inspiring. You know, we're in this spot, Chris, and I know you know it, like a global pandemic. We're going through something that we've never gone through before. And I've said to Sid that I've been rattled a couple times, and I do try my darndest to have gratitude every day. But I also understand that I get caught up, the blinders go on, and bam, there's a woe is me day. And then I read stories about guys like Steve Gleason or yourself, or watch stories. What would you say to someone like me who gets caught up in the day-to-day? Because I believe maybe your perspective, especially in these moments right now, might do people some good. I read about your gratitude and how you work for that gratitude. Like, what would you say to someone like me who's sitting here and right now I'm relatively healthy and getting caught up sometimes in that day to day.
We all do. There are still moments where, I get upset at my son or my daughter, more my son because he's older. And then I think after, why did I do that? But what I would say is it's very easy for me to appreciate a sunny day, fresh air, being able to move, and to stop in those moments and realize that none of that was guaranteed to me. And it's easy to not think about tomorrow, in part because tomorrow could bring a change, and a change could indicate a bigger change that might be coming. And so it's a combination of it brings fear to look down the road, but it also allows me to feel gratitude to be in the moment, in today. So I just, whenever I have something that I enjoy, whether it's, smelling fresh cut grass, whether it's taking a bike ride with the kids, I never pass up one of those because I wasn't supposed to have any of these. And ultimately, every day forward, we're all going to be one day older, one day less physically capable, whether we're sick or not. And why look past today? Whenever I get in a bad spot, my wife even says, hey, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow for any reason. So today is kind of what we focus on in my household. And I break today into parts, the morning, and there's still the afternoon and night to come. And I try to enjoy each little segment because there's something to it to enjoy. And this time of year, it's very, very easy. I think in the winter, I was concerned about that last year. I managed to find that in coaching my son's hockey team in the Flames. And so I just identify those things that I enjoy, and I really try to pour my energy into making sure that I appreciate those.
I'm terrible at smelling the roses. Just honestly, I'm just talking out loud here, Chris, at this point. I'm terrible. Like hearing everything you said, this entire interview, your story. I'm awful at smelling the roses, and I got to get better at that.
It's not easy. Like a lot of us, myself included, you have to be forced to do it. So to find that without being forced, that really takes some effort. That's just human nature.
Yeah,
you're right. Before
these reminders
before we do
help.
let you go, they do absolutely, Timmy. They definitely help. Chris, before we let you go, we mentioned it a couple times during the show. June is ALS Awareness Month. We can't let you go, Chris, without letting people at home listening or watching let them know how they can help if they want to. How can people help, Chris?
Sure. So we have a website, and it's calgaryflames.com/snowystrong. On there, you can find our story, a link to my wife's unbelievable blog that has detailed the last year of our lives and will continue to, as well as videos from several NHL players to us. And if you went on Twitter or elsewhere, you could find under the hashtag Trickshot4, the number 4, Snowy, SNOWY, all of the trick shots done to date. We'd love to see anybody, even if you've not been challenged, to do that. Post that challenge to people that you know and make even the smallest donation. We think we can help cure this disease through a lot of small donations, and I think that's the best way to ask. If you ask for something big, that's hard, but a lot of little ones, we can get there.
Keep kicking ass and taking names. We appreciate you coming on with us, and I want to do this again another year down the road, okay?
Same here, and you have 3 days now. You've been challenged.
All right.
I apologize for the bad video that's about to come your way. I apologize ahead of time.
I may or may not have some outtakes already, Chris, but I'll post them all with the rest of it, okay?
Let's just go with those.
Awesome.
All right.
Take care,
thanks
Chris.
for this. We appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.